Welcome to Uncovered. It's Wednesday. I'm Anthony. He's Ron, and together we're about to uncover the MAGA propaganda that is not covered by the mainstream and corporate media. We should probably start with a Happy New Year, almost. This is our kind of New Year's Eve episode, and so we're not going to see you again before 2026. So, Happy New Year, and sorry about 2025. is that a good place to start,
Ron?
Ron?
26 will be a lot better.
Well, there's only one way you can go, right? When things kind of get to this. Before we start, I just want to talk about the Midas Plus Substack that you are the editor-in-chief of. The work you've been doing recently, certainly the 25 top villains of the Trump administration, has been fascinating to read. I did guess that Stephen Miller would be in the top position, but I don't think that was a stretch, really. So, well done on that. But just tell us a little bit about the work you've been doing that really kind of wraps up the end of this year.
So, well, the main thing that I do is every single day is my Today in Politics bulletin, which really just sort of recaps everything that happened that day in real time, where I'm staying on top of the news, writing it up, quoting people, all that kind of stuff, 12 hours a day. So it's from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. It goes out every day. So one of the things I thought about was it's sort of like you have to really put everything that's going on in context and understand on so much, on all the pardons, the crypto scams, Ukraine, Russia, you can't. I realize that so many people read one story in a vacuum about a particular topic. And if they only read that story, they just don't understand the bigger picture of it. And so I thought, well, people who are reading my column every single day, which is about 400,000 people, yes, I think that they're up. They understand as each new thing comes out, the context to put it in, but there are so many people that don't. And I thought in what I would do at the end of the year is take literally like the 500 worst things that Trump did. Now, my bulletins are both Democrats and Republicans, both, but I'd pull out and omit Congress. Just pull out the 500 worst things I could find in chronological order that the Trump administration did just this year and put them all in order. So what it is it's like, it probably would take you an hour to read the 500. And I know there are a lot of people that have commented about these that say like they only can get through like 10 or 12 and they have to stop and have a cigarette or a cocktail, and I totally get all. This is not really made for somebody to sit down and read 500 horror stories, and they're just one paragraph a piece there. I try to keep them as brief as possible. But what I wanted to do is create this really historical record and current history record to where somebody could sit down and read through this entire thing for about an hour and understand fully everything that this administration has done on every level, economic, political, criminal justice, fraud, you name it, ICE raids, deportations, foreign policy. If you sit down and read this, you will really have a very good, solid feel for what happened this year. That's because, the purpose.
As you describe, it's like a matrix. And it's not like, oh, well, the president is a sexual abuser. I mean, that story in any other country would bring down the presidency. But in America, because of his lifelong criminality, it's the only thing he knows. And so everything is interlinked, and all of these stories will ultimately amount to hopefully his downfall. But in the current moment, as you describe, it's very difficult to even scratch the surface of it. Right. And so to see it chronologically and to see it kind of broken down is very helpful. So I'm grateful to you for that. I think we're both grateful to the existence of Substack because it's given us a new home to do this type of writing. I'm writing every day on mine, The Anthony Davis, and trying to just explain to people the stuff, as you said, that the corporate media is not covering, because it frustrates me to turn on CBS or any of these networks and see them just carrying on as if there isn't a fascist takeover of the U.S. government.
Well, and I think that what you bring to your Substack and the show is a different perspective, a European perspective. You are able to sort of zoom out and look at the United States, yes, you are here now, and you've been here now for a long time, but you're also able to pull back and look at it as an outside observer from a European perspective and sort of frame things that I think in a way that a lot of Americans don't really look at things. I mean, you've done it on this show with me, and you do it in your columns too, as well as, some of the people that you find to interview are very unique too. They're people that you don't typically see on mainstream media, but offer a really good perspective.
It is interesting, isn't it? Because if you come from a place with a welfare state and socialized medicine, those things are just normal, right? Where and also where, people can afford groceries. I mean, just the cost of living in Europe is so different to the US. And I really think that in the US, we become institutionalized into thinking that this is how it is. And I've spoken to people whose healthcare price is going up in a couple of days' time to the point that it is unaffordable, and there is no alternative. This is the thing. It's like you literally live or die by whether or not you can afford to pay for your healthcare, and that is not really a civilized society as I have grown up to understand it. So it is very interesting to kind of bring that perspective. Let's dive into the news, because Ukraine obviously is at the top of the list for a lot of people right now. This is I feel sorry for Volodymyr Zelenskyy having to fly all over the world, flying to Miami to go to West Palm Beach to meet with Trump in Mar-a-Lago. I mean, it's the last thing he wants to be doing. And I have to say, the way he has kept his composure, he could easily have just turned around and smacked that guy one in the cheek. I'm sure that's how he was feeling, listening to Trump parroting Vladimir Putin's talking points. But he didn't. He remained composed. There's that kind of famous photo now from a couple of days ago where he's just kind of looking up at him like a kind of daddy figure and thinking completely the opposite.
And this is another area where reading those 500 things, for me, putting them together, because there's so much in there about Ukraine and Russia, and it really, like, you can't look at that meeting in a vacuum and fully understand what's going on. But when I put together the 500 things, and which began in January, right before Trump was sworn in, all the way through, and all the meetings with Zelenskyy, all the Putin meetings, the Witkoff stuff, like, when you watch it all unfold and play out, and then you go into a meeting like the one that just took place, you really look at it completely differently, right? Because you understand that the pattern is this. And Putin is played Trump like a fiddle throughout this entire process, is that every single time Zelenskyy has had a meeting with Trump where he is about to meet with him to talk about Patriot missiles, ceasefires, mineral deals, whatever it is, Putin will call Trump unscheduled.
Yes,
he will call Trump,
right?
Typically the morning
pattern
of or the night before.
Yeah.
And he will load Trump up with his talking points and grievances. And then what does Trump do? Trump does not do what a normal person would do, which is like, well, I don't believe that, or he's bullshitting me on this, or, not, that's nonsense. We're kind of parse through and kind of find the few things he's saying that might be useful and disregard the rest. That's not what Trump does. So what does Trump do? He shows up at these meetings with Zelenskyy right after these 2-3 hour phone calls with Putin and starts spouting off all of Putin's talking points, but not saying these are Putin's, saying this is the position of the United States.
Right.
And the clips that we have of it was just horrifying. I think any person, that's what I posted on Twitter, is like, everyone in the whole world knows that 99% of what Putin says is BS, is lies about everything, except the president of the United States believes 99% of what he says. It's like the exact opposite of the whole world, and he just happens to be in charge of our country. It's literally a living nightmare. So Zelenskyy knows this very well, but he has to play this game, where he has figured out that the only possible way He's triangulating between the Republicans in Congress who support him very strongly and Trump. And what he's trying to do is not do anything that can give Trump any ammunition where he can go to Republicans in Congress and say, see this guy, he's terrible, he's horrible, we need to walk away. So Zelenskyy just refuses to give him anything. So what Zelenskyy has figured out is that he can just keep agreeing to everything that the United States comes up with, because he knows at this point that no matter what the U.S. comes up with, Putin will not agree to it.
Yeah.
So he's just playing this game with Trump. That's why Trump always talks about, oh, we're making major progress. Progress with who? Getting Zelenskyy to agree to stuff? Well, that's all well and good. What's the progress with Putin? There isn't any.
The other dimension to this is that because Trump is in awe of Vladimir Putin, he can't keep his mouth shut about the communique. So he admitted, I'll play the clip of him with the Israeli Prime Minister, just so you can see he wants to show off in front of Netanyahu that he's spoken to Putin. So he's like, you know who told me about this? Vladimir Putin told me about this, right? And it reminded me of Helsinki, you know, where he chooses Putin's word over the U.S. security services as to whether he meddled in the election. Trump is so in awe of Putin. Now, people have speculated that it's because of compromat. I don't personally believe that. I just think that, you know, once a dictator, always a dictator, and Trump just wants to be kind of up there. You know, he looks at the size of countries on a map and he goes, big country, powerful, small country, no power. It's as simple as that.
Nuclear weapons.
Right.
Yeah. And I think what he looks at is Putin, who doesn't really have to run for re-election, who's been in power for almost 3 decades, who can do whatever he wants. Everyone's afraid of him. Everyone kisses his ass. That's what Trump wants. You know?
Let's take a look.
Up and have a beautiful lunch, and we'll see you later.
The alleged strike on Putin's residence could scuttle the peace.
Yeah, I don't like it. It's not good. I heard about it this morning. You know who told me about it? President Putin told me about it. Early in the morning, he said he was attacked. It's no good. It's no good. Don't forget, you know, the tomahawks. I stopped the tomahawks. I didn't want that. Because we're talking about, you know, it's a delicate period of time. This is not the right time. It's one thing to be offensive, because they were offensive. It's another thing to attack his house. It's not the right time to do any of that, and can't do it. And I learned about it from President Putin today. I was very angry about it. What? Well,
So a real diplomat, a real strategist, and a real president would not have said any of that stuff publicly. And because he would know that, you know, this game of 4D chess, it puts him in a terrible position, not just from Zelensky's perspective, but the rest of the world, who are increasingly waking up to realize that Trump is taking orders from Putin.
Yeah, it's about time. I mean, the whole thing was a hoax. I mean, like I said, every single meeting that Zelenskyy schedules to talk about weapon systems, and you just heard Trump mention tomahawks, which he's been promising Zelenskyy for months and months and months and never delivers.
Yeah, let that slip.
So they're having a meeting to talk about tomahawks. So what does Putin do? He calls Trump that morning and says, Zelenskyy just bombed my house. And Trump says he's very angry and no more tomahawks. Well, I mean, the Ukrainians immediately came out and said, no, we didn't do this. This is not us. Has the Kremlin produced a video of this strike? Nothing. Do you think that they would have video that they would put out? Of course, if it happened. They have no video. They have no nothing. There's the U.S. intelligence doesn't say that this happened. No other country says this happened.
Ukraine is denying all of it, of course.
Ukraine is denying it, and Ukraine is very proud to take credit for everything that they do.
Right.
And they're just saying this wasn't us. So you have Trump wanting to like scuttle peace talks and cancel weapon shipments because Putin said something. I mean, this is where we are at. This is the United States of America. We are aligned with Putin against the rest of the world for Why? I have no idea, other than, enrichment of Trump and his cronies who want business deals in Russia, as they continue to talk about.
The NATO ambassador, Matthew Whitaker, went on Fox Business, I think, and also couldn't really explain this, or didn't really have an answer, but at least he erred on the side of caution. Let's take a look.
Exactly. Next one for you. Vladimir Putin claims Ukraine attacked his home. Watch this.
President Putin told me about it. Early in the morning, he said he was attacked. It's no good. It's no good. Don't forget, the Tomahawks. I stopped the Tomahawks. I didn't want that. Because we're talking about, it's a delicate period of time. This is not the right time. It's one thing to be offensive, because they were offensive. It's another thing to attack his house. It's not the right time to do any of that, and can't do it.
So Ukraine denying this attack ever happened. What do we know, Ambassador?
Well, I know that there are reports from the Russian side that this alleged attack at one of the presidential palaces by drone or drones, it is unclear whether it actually happened. Ukraine is receiving drones and missiles every single night into their capital city. And all they can do is fight back. And, it seems to me a little indelicate to be this close at a peace deal, Ukraine really wanting to get a peace deal done, and then to do something that would be viewed as reckless or not helpful. So we're going to get to the bottom of the intelligence. And for me, the most important thing is what the United States and our allies' intelligence services say about whether or not this attack actually happened.
Very good. We'll have.
So even Whitaker is talking in hypotheticals.
Yeah, all this confusion, all this nonsense, smokescreen, this is typical Putin. This is everyone with half a brain knows how he operates. This is what he does, because he's not interested in any kind of peace or ceasefire or anything else. You're going to have to force him to it by wrecking his economy. And the only way to do that is to allow Ukraine to do long-range strikes into Russian, not civilian population centers, into their infrastructure. That is the only thing that will end this war. Wreck the Russian economy with maximum sanctions and long-term missile strikes. But Trump thinks he's going to do it with some kind of real estate deal with Putin. And guess what? We're a year in and we're no closer. It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous that Whitaker, who sits there and absolutely knows that Trump is full of shit, and his boss believes Putin over the rest of the world and our allies, but he has to play this dumb game on Fox, where he has to pretend like maybe this might have happened. It's so sad that the president of the United States listens to Vladimir Putin as his most reliable source over all other sources, including his own intelligence agencies.
Let's take a look at a clip of Trump, again, kind of talking his way around the concept of a ceasefire, the concept of a plan. There is no ceasefire to be had as long as Vladimir Putin's involved. But let's see how Trump wriggles his way out of this question.
Steve, and with Jared and Marco and everybody.
Did Russia agree, or did Putin agree to a ceasefire to allow a referendum to take
Not a
place?
ceasefire. And that's one of the points that we're working on right now. No, not a ceasefire. He feels that, look, they're fighting and to stop, and then if they have to start again, which is a possibility, he doesn't want to be in that position. I understand that position. The president feels strongly about that or something, but I think we're finding ways that we can get around that. But I understand President Putin from that standpoint. You have to understand the other side. And, I'm on the side of peace. I'm on the side of stopping the war. So, but I think that's a problem that's going to get solved.
Would people who live outside of Ukrainians who fled during the war be allowed to participate?
The man just says nothing, doesn't he? And also he looks like shit. We should probably point that out. This idea as I see it, this is just going to keep going, because what people seem to forget is, for all these press conferences and all of these meetings and Witkoff and the whole thing, that whilst these things are being televised and these press conferences are happening, the war is still raging. Vladimir Putin is still bombing the shit out of Kyiv, and the Ukrainians are doing their best to defend themselves and retaliate, but the war doesn't stop for these press conferences, does it?
Yeah, and no, and what Trump was asked about specifically there, the clip doesn't really explain it very well, but what he was asked specifically there was about one of Putin's demands with any peace plan that he's come up with, which is a ridiculous demand, and the U.S. should just tell him to walk away. But of course, Trump doesn't, is to have an election. He wants a Ukrainian election. Why? Because he wants to tamper in that election like he tampers in every other election. And he wants Zelenskyy out because he wants a pro-Russian puppet candidate like he has in Belarus and neighboring Belarus and Hungary to take over and resolve the war favorably to him. That's what he's hoping for. So he's been demanding that before he will sit down, he will not sit down with Zelenskyy. He's saying Zelensky's not a legitimate ruler because he hasn't had an election in 4 years or 5 years because they're under martial law. They're in war right now. So he's demanding that Ukraine hold an election when, of course, Russia hasn't had a free and fair election for decades.
Right. The irony.
But he's demanding that. And so instead of Trump telling him to, you're not going to dictate whether Ukraine has elections or not, you hear him saying, so pressuring Zelenskyy. So Zelenskyy finally, what he did a couple months ago is he said, okay, called Putin's bluff, called Trump's bluff, said, all right, fine, we'll have elections. The only thing I'm asked for is a 30-day ceasefire because we have to campaign, we have to hold events, we have to hold rallies, we have to go to the polls, and I don't want people being bombed while we're having an election. So if Putin will agree to a 30-day ceasefire, we'll hold an election. What did Putin do? Oh, no, I can't do that. No.
Yeah.
And what does Trump say? Well, I understand where Putin's coming from here, because it'd be awfully hard for him to start bombing again after he stops for 30 days. That would be very inconvenient for him. So we have to understand Putin's perspective on that. That's our president.
The hypocrisy is that, whenever Trump gets the opportunity, he always likes to throw it back to what he calls the Russia hoax about the meddling in the election in 2016. Russia. And yet we are all, 330 million of us, are having to watch Trump in cahoots with the Kremlin in real time, and yet he still denies, these are Trump's small hands, by the way, he still denies any connection with Russia. It's so... the hypocrisy is rife, and we're having to live through it. We have another clip.
At this point, though, Russiagate seems so quaint because, whether or not Putin coordinated with the Trump campaign to meddle in the 2016 election is almost irrelevant at this point.
Yeah.
Because whether they work together or not, Putin gets everything he wants from the U.S. government and the U.S. president. So, I don't really care whether somebody can prove that they were coordinating. What we have on its face is a pro-Putin presidency, which is worse than that.
But Robert Mueller proved it in that document.
Yeah,
and no one read it.
But trying to relitigate that at this point is pointless. We can see before our very eyes we have a pro-Putin president.
Isn't it tragic though that a scandal as big as the Russiagate gets superseded by more of this treasonous behavior and it means that in order for us to be able to intellectualize it, we have to park the whole Russiagate thing. We can't even go there anymore.
Turns out that was just an appetizer.
Just an appetizer. It was an amuse-bouche. That's what this was. Yeah. Let's look at Trump. This next clip, in my mind, he's parroting Russian talking points where he tells us what wonderful things Putin has done for Ukraine. Let's take a look.
Yeah. So in your conversation with President Putin, did you discuss what responsibility Russia will have for any kind of reconstruction of Ukraine post an agreement?
I did. They're going to be helping. Russia's going to be helping. Russia wants to see Ukraine succeed. Once, it sounds a little strange, but I was explaining to the president, President Putin was very generous in his feeling toward Ukraine succeeding, including supplying energy, electricity, and other things at very low prices. So a lot of good things came out of that call today. But they were in the works for 2 weeks with Steve and with Jared and Marco and everybody.
Did Russia?
It just doesn't. None of it makes any sense. It's just
like
gibberish.
The stupidest person in America is the president.
Yeah, literally.
I mean, what the Europeans have talked about in terms of the Russians helping to rebuild Ukraine after the war is seizing their assets in Europe that are currently frozen,
right?
Most of which are being held in Belgium, I believe. I think 90%, billions of dollars, is signing that over to Ukraine so they can use that money to rebuild. It is not what Putin and Trump are saying, to have Russian energy companies going into Ukraine when the war is over, because we know what that means. Of course, the Russians want to take over the Ukrainian energy infrastructure. I mean, the Ukrainians don't want any freaking Russians in their country doing anything. Only thing that they want is money from them as war reparations. That is it. And they don't even want money from Moscow. They want the money that is currently being impounded by the Europeans that belongs to Russia. So what the hell is Trump talking about? And then when he said, then he says, oh, Putin really is so concerned and he just has such love for the Ukrainian people and he wants them to succeed.
Yeah.
What is he talking about?
Yeah.
He's literally the biggest moron on the planet. I don't even know pro-Putin MAGA crazies that believe that. They don't believe that nonsense.
What he's describing is Putin's plan to restore the Soviet Union. That's what he's describing. That's what Putin wants, ultimately.
That's what Putin's describing. But I think
Right.
Trump thinks he means that Putin's going to go in and help rebuild their country or something.
Do you think Trump knows that Ukraine is a sovereign nation? Do you think he actually realizes that?
Probably not. He probably views it as like a satellite country of Russia that, is maybe not doing well on their own, which is nonsense. I mean, their economy was absolutely booming before this invasion. So I don't know. I think that I think it all goes back to the first perfect phone call thing.
Yeah.
And that's where he demanded that they prosecute Joe Biden. They refused, and that began his animosity and hatred towards Ukraine. I don't think it really has much to do with anything else.
Trump's warmongering continues. I mean, it wasn't on our agenda to talk about, but, he's now hit these Venezuelan boats that were on the dock in Venezuela and taken out the whole dockside. And, the way he kind of spoke about it was so vague. I mean, there really is, I don't get the sense that Trump reads intelligence reports even now that there is war underway. We knew he didn't before, but it's just hearsay. It's things that people have mentioned to him that he kind of picks up upon. So that really is very much an act of war, and we'll see how that plays out in the coming days. But with Netanyahu present, and obviously they're discussing Gaza because, of course, the 20-point plan is failing there. People are still starving, and now Israel is withholding aid again. He starts to kind of boast about Iran and to threaten Iran. Because, of course, we should remind people that there was an Iran nuclear deal in place that Obama negotiated, that Trump cancelled. And so, of course, the relationship with Iran became that much more fractious, and then Trump went and bombed supposedly one of their nuclear sites, which turned out to have been tipped off, so they cleared it out. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. But let's just listen to him talking his way around the Iran situation.
Another war with Iran.
Well, I don't want to say that, but Iran may be behaving badly. It hasn't been confirmed. But if it's confirmed, look, they know the consequences. Consequences will be very powerful, maybe more powerful than the last time. Yeah. And Iran should have made a deal the last time. I gave them the option. I said, you can make a deal. Do it. I told them, do it. And they didn't believe me. Now they believe me.
Do you have evidence that Iran is behaving badly, and what do you mean by that?
This is just what we hear. But usually where there's smoke, there's fire. Have you heard the expression?
What do you mean related to the nuclear capabilities?
Well, no, I'm hearing that they're not nuclear yet, but maybe nuclear too. The sites were obliterated, but they're looking at other sites. That's what I've heard. They're looking. So it'll take a long time. They're not going to go back to where they were, but they have other places they can go. And if they're doing that, they're making a big mistake. Yeah, please. There's no reason for them to do it.
Mr. President,
Again, more talking in riddles. I just want to highlight the fact that he thought he sounded really clever when he remembered a phrase where there's smoke, there's fire. And he kind of wanted to get credit for the fact that he'd actually said something.
He invented that, you know.
It made him sound literate. So that was the reason why he wanted to put a little bit of a spotlight onto that moment. And then there was this misunderstanding about the question about nuclear. He thought that the question was about, are Iran going to use nuclear weapons on the US or whoever else? And he kind of just misunderstood that question completely. I mean, this guy's got the nuclear codes, Ron. You know, I'm very worried about.
You know, what's scary is just like people like Putin and Netanyahu know how to play this guy. They play him like a fiddle. They both have known Trump a long time, probably, and had more dealings with him than probably any other foreign leaders. And they have great intelligence services, the Russians and the Israelis.
Sure.
And they have provided their leaders with extensive studies and dossiers on how to handle Trump. And it's really not all that complicated to begin with. And they get it. And so, look, CNN put together that famous montage like a year ago of Netanyahu every time he came to the United States, going all the way back to 2002, has appeared before Congress or on American media claiming that Iran was weeks or months away from a nuclear weapon. He first said that in 2002 in front of the U.S. Congress and has been saying it on every trip to the United States since, because Netanyahu, more than anything else in the world, wants a war between the United States and Iran. That's his dream come true. And so he's been trying to start one forever. And why did we bomb the nuke sites? What it was 6 months ago? Because of Netanyahu. It was intelligence that Netanyahu and the Israelis gave to the U.S. president that even Fox reported was different than the intelligence of the United States, but Trump believed the Israelis. Yeah. And that is why we moved on the last strike. So what happens? Netanyahu rolls back into the United States again yesterday, day before yesterday. And what do we hear from Trump? Hey, I heard from some people that Iran might be working on those nukes again, might be working on those. Who did you hear from? I don't want to say, you know, a little bird told me. Who's standing next to him who's been trying to start a war with Iran
an old bird
25 years?
Yeah.
Netanyahu. Guess where he got this information from? It's unconfirmed. We're looking into it. Netanyahu just told him that. And what is Trump going to do? Start threatening Iran based on what Netanyahu said. It's the same thing as Putin. Exactly the same. These guys tell Trump something. U.S. intelligence says something different. Trump goes with what Netanyahu and Putin say, and that becomes U.S. policy.
I forgot to mention that obviously Netanyahu arrived, red carpet treatment. Putin, as we know, in Alaska, red carpet treatment. But Zelenskyy arrived to Miami airport, I think. There was nobody to meet him from the U.S. State Department. There was no dignitaries there. He literally just showed up on his own. And if that is not
probably prefers, but it's still a slight.
100%, but it's symbolistic, isn't it? Yeah. And it's basically saying how little respect Trump has for Ukraine. I don't know why I missed it, but I only read about it this week, about Pete Hegseth wearing a Russian Federation tie
a
couple of weeks ago.
A long time ago, yeah.
Right. I mean, talk about, he already had given us a bunch of clues as to his mindset with his tattoos. Now he's wearing it with his ties too. I mean, it's just so obvious.
He wore it to a meeting with Zelenskyy.
That's right.
Yeah.
Where do you think this is going to kind of go in terms of Iran and Netanyahu? Do you think Netanyahu's going to maintain the pressure on Trump till he gets what he wants? Because, Gaza, we haven't really spoken about, is still in limbo and people are still starving and Trump is still planning his Riviera and his kind of construction projects. But in terms of movement on these things, there should be more momentum than there really is. It's almost like Trump loses interest, thinks, oh, it's done. Then he adds that war to a list of 8 wars. I've now ended 8 wars. Meanwhile, most of them are still raging, or they didn't exist in the first place. And we're now hearing about the UAE and going to war in the Middle East with former allies. Again, Trump getting in the way, goading, causing trouble, taking sides.
Yeah, well, yeah, that is part of the reason is because he's got so many deals and corruptions and scams going all over the place that, it is hard for him to focus on any one thing. I mean, he's trying to build a ballroom and a triumphal arch at the same time too, and he's trying to fit out a Qatari jet and pimp that out. He's trying to gold up the White House, and he's got crypto scams, and he's got golf course scams. I mean, the guy's got scams on top of scams. He's got $1 million a plate dinners. He's pardoning this guy and that guy. He's hosting the Kennedy Center. I mean, when does Gaza fit in? I'm not exactly sure. And we also know, by the way, that 10 out of the last 11 days he's played golf. And he's been in Mar-a-Lago for 11 days. 10 of those he played golf. The only day he didn't was this Netanyahu thing. So, I mean, you got to fit a lot of golf in there too, which has been about 40% of his presidency. So, yeah, I mean, where is this going to go with that? I mean, the thing is, Netanyahu, all the reporting is that Netanyahu is a source of great annoyance to Trump because he constantly asks for more. That's what he does. Trump agrees to give him something that he wants, and then Netanyahu immediately wants something else. He wants more. And I think that he annoys Trump, but at the same time, he kisses Trump's ass. Trump's MAGA supporters are rabid Israel supporters. And so, Trump feels like he's got to kind of give Netanyahu essentially a blank check. Right. I think it's just annoying to Trump that every time Netanyahu cashes that check, he wants another one, even bigger.
Well, they just announced an award. Trump is going to get the Israel Award for services
from
to
the FIFA guy.
Right. Another made up award that has come just in time to celebrate and platform Trump.
Yeah, ridiculous. Unbelievable. I mean, he really knows how to play them. I mean, these guys, they get it. I think it would be an absolute disaster for Americans to go into Gaza and to try and do anything in there other than humanitarian assistance. Sure. Construction, rebuilding, any military presence. My gosh, I just think that would be an absolute nightmare. And I hope that Trump doesn't even consider that, but I know Jared Kushner's pushing for it.
You mentioned the ballroom. Let's talk about that for a moment, because there is an element of symbolism associated with the desecration of the East Wing of the White House. My theory is that his kind of hatred for Melania, or Melania's hatred for him, the East Wing, is kind of symbolistic of the First Lady. So let's smash that thing down. But he said something really interesting when he was doing the press conference with Netanyahu about the ballroom. Let's take a look.
On the renovation as an example, I'm doing a magnificent, big, beautiful ballroom that the country has wanted, the White House has wanted for 150 years. It's a massive job, and it's a tiny fraction of that number. And we're under budget and ahead of schedule. Now, it's bigger than I told you. After realizing we're going to do the inauguration in that building, it's got all bulletproof glass. It's got all they call it drone-free roof. So drones won't touch it. It's a big, beautiful, safe building, but it's it's a big project for a tiny fraction of that. We're under budget and ahead of schedule, and they've wanted it for 150 years. Think of it: the Federal Reserve Building, 2 buildings there. They don't know what they're doing.
Blah, 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 blah. It's a drone-free roof, Ron. So the line we need to focus on, that is a new one. Again, he's kind of let it slip. Is that they're going to do the inauguration, or we're going to do the inauguration in the ballroom. And so therefore it has to be bigger and bulletproof.
No, who gets to decide where the inauguration is going to happen?
Whose inauguration are we talking about here, Ron?
I mean, who decides that, though? There is a person who decides it, where you're going to hold the inauguration. It's the president-elect. So when he says we are going to hold the inauguration there, only the president-elect can make that decision. That cannot be him, right? So what is he talking about? We're going to hold the inauguration. Well, if it's J.D. Vance, Trump really has no say in that. If Vance doesn't want to do it there and wants to go with the traditional place to do it, Trump can't dictate it. The only way that Trump could decide to hold it in the ballroom would be if he was the actual president-elect, which, we know he can't be, right?
I don't know. Maybe do we disagree on this? Because I am 100% convinced that Trump will be inaugurating himself inside a 90,000 square foot ballroom.
I think that he is looking for a way to do that for sure. I mean, look, he continues to talk like that. Sometimes I think that he does it just to get under our skin, talk about running again.
Well, he used to do it for that reason.
But I also think part of it is also calculated. Well, he does what he always does with this stuff. He keeps putting it out there to gauge the public's reaction.
And to normalize it too.
And once people stop pushing back on it, once people stop going, well, that's unconstitutional, you can't do that, and they just sort of nod along, that's when he's going to take the next step. And
this is why it's important.
I'm going to do this.
Right. This is why it's important that we understand the kind of mindset of this personality disorder, the malignant narcissism, the mental health aspect of it. Because, Trump said in a speech a little while ago, my greatest regret was leaving the White House in 2021. Yeah. Right? That was his greatest regret.
There are people who did not want him to.
Right.
Around him, like Michael Flynn.
And he was late to leave, right? It took a while to get him out. And so if that's his greatest regret, just knowing what we know about his kind of state of mind and his personality disorder and his ego and his desire to be in charge, his control issues, he hates J.D. Vance. I mean, that's blatantly obvious. Vance came in because Don Jr. suggested it, Peter Thiel, that whole kind of oligarch thing that we know about.
That wasn't Trump's first choice by any means.
Right. Yeah. So yes, there is a chance that J.D. Vance could succeed Donald Trump, and it could be because Trump has a health issue.
In fact, by the way, just an aside, you know who Trump's choice was? It's come out now in the reporting. He was going to take Doug Burgum, who's the Interior Secretary. Right. That's who he wanted. And they persuaded him to take, because Burgum is a billionaire who's got, all kinds of cash.
Yeah.
So, but they talked him into Vance. So you're right. Vance is not his guy. Yeah.
So I just cannot see Trump passing the torch to anybody, not least a Democrat.
One more thing.
Yeah.
Don't think for a second all that terrible shit that Vance said back in the day about Trump,
right?
America's Hitler and all that. Mm-hmm. Don't think for a second Trump has let that go. I mean, he just pretends not to care.
Right. Tolerates it.
But he cares. He knows all that stuff that Vance said about him back then. And so that's factors in too. Deep down, he doesn't trust Vance. It's not even that he doesn't like him. It's because Vance was an OG Trump hater. He will never trust him.
Also, don't think that Putin is not advising Trump on how to stay in office. I mean, Putin switched from president to prime minister a couple of times. He has now,
right?
right. He
won't go away either.
He does these sham elections where, oh look, Putin's won again in a landslide, and so it's all tightly manipulated and controlled. He's been in there 24 years almost now, I think, and so I have no doubt that Putin will have kind of encouraged Trump to remain in office. And so, I really think people need to start taking this seriously because, Nancy Pelosi gave an interview the other day where she was saying, the Democrats are gonna win the House back in the midterms. And I just thought, well, even if they do, it kind of doesn't matter because Trump is now setting the rules. He's been ignoring Congress for the last year anyway. He is operating this unitary style executive, and no protocol or tradition or rules of the past are going to affect the way he operates going forward. And so we have to learn from history, but we also have to learn the mindset of the dictator. What makes a dictator a dictator? Somebody who doesn't care for the people or for elections and just wants to be at the in that senior position forever after.
Listen, if there's a year in the Trump era of the last 10 years that stands out to me more than any other year, it's 2021. And not many people would say that. And it's not even about January 6th. It's about after Trump left, I'm talking about.
Yeah.
When the entire country, the Democratic Party, the media, did this giant collective sigh and said, oh, we're done with him now. I heard this every day. He'll never be president. He has no chance after January 6th. He's done. And every time, that was the time when I was the most vigilant. That was the time when I continued to post Trump speeches because he continued to hold rallies. Even then,
yep.
His Mar-a-Lago events, the things he was saying, the things he was plotting. And I kept posting them, and I got so much pushback in 2021 from people that said, why are you doing this? You're amplifying him. You're platforming him. All the bullshit.
Yeah.
Be honest, came from mostly from the left comments back then. And I'm like, you don't understand. This is a 10-year battle at least.
Right.
This man is never going away.
Yeah.
He's like herpes. He's a virus.
Yeah.
He until he's gone. And I mean like gone. And I'm saying by peaceful medical means, that's when this is over. And it's not over with any election.
Right.
And so that's why, I can remember, sounding those alarms, just like I did leading up to January 6th when I predicted many times that there would be violence. And everybody said I was full of it, overreacting, looking for clickbait. No, I was right. And they're all the posts are still there from December 2020 that I made of predicting violence.
Sure.
And you can read the replies of people saying, you're being an alarmist. You're being hysterical. Okay. But that year stands out because I said, this guy is never going away. And then, lo and behold, a couple years later, people are like, oh shit, we got to deal with Trump again. Well, the time to get him was in 21. The time to finish him off was in 2021. Merrick Garland should have launched in prosecutions, investigations. Jack Smith should have been appointed right then, early 2021.
When you have Republicans on side.
Brazil handled Bolsonaro.
Right.
But we didn't. We dithered. And we said, oh, he'll go away. He's finished. He's done. And now here we are.
But this is an ongoing lesson for the Democrats. And, even the DNC, refusing to release the report on why Harris lost the election, to me is, again, in this mindset of control and lack of, that kind of lack of desire for full transparency, but also just pushing on and doing the right thing. And my concern is that part of the reason why they don't want to release that document is because they want to run her again. So, they're literally living in the past. And that is my concern, is that there is not a kind of equal opposition to Trumpism, because you can be certain that behind the scenes, Trump's enablers, remember, Trump is only really interested in ballrooms and arches and, golf. That's really where his mindset is. But his enablers, the people, the Musk and the people that he associates with, Heritage Foundation, these people, they do have a plan, a post-Trump plan, to keep this kind of MAGA republicanism in office. And they are working so hard on it. And the outreach, we spoke a little bit about Turning Point USA and these chapters and trying to kind of infiltrate voters when they're young. There is a huge movement to maintain this far-right Christian nationalism as the kind of de facto leadership for the USA. And I worry that the Democrats are not talking about it. They're not organizing. I'm not talking about grassroots. There's a lot of people doing some amazing work on the streets. But in terms of leadership, in terms of the DNC, in terms of the people, Hakeem and Chuck and these types of people should be talking about it every day, press conferencing every week, making it clear, exposing the MAGA plan to rig the election. Talk about it. It's all out there. The redistricting, the gerrymandering, the ownership of the voting machines, anything that is currently, that they have evidence for. Just silence. Just this naive desire to think that the status quo will kind of fall into place as default. The world order will realign. Not this time, babykins, not this time.
I do not like to hear when they say, oh, we are going to take back the House. And I understand, you got to project the confidence and all that. But at the same time, we cannot lose the sense of urgency, the sense of desperation.
Yeah.
The fact that, what has happened in these special elections is Democrats are lined up a month before waiting outside, like it's tickets to a Bruce Springsteen concert in 1987.
Yeah.
That they're there is a fever among Democrats to oust all of these people, the enablers in Congress as well. And so, I get to I do when I hear these people, oh, we're definitely going to win. And, we're going to do this. And I'm like, I don't really like that talk. Cause I'm concerned that that's going to tamp down
bring some receipts,
the intensity.
Why not talk about criminalizing these people? Why not talk about criminalizing Kristi Noem and Tom Homan and all of the people that are breaking the law, even the Attorney General herself? Why not say, this is our plan? And we're going to, these people will be on trial.
Yeah. And we're going to, come out with a comprehensive agenda about how you're going to derail this administration, how you're going to do oversight, what subpoenas are you going to issue?
Right. And prevent it from ever happening again.
Plan. Not just say Trump sucks and we're not him. Because here's the bottom line. Trump's approval ratings are in the toilet, but so are Democratic approval ratings of Congress.
The Democrats are polling below Donald Trump.
Exactly. So it's again, you're going to have... See, I don't believe that Trump won because in 2024, because the country wanted Trump. I just believe that there were a lot of people that felt like they were both bad, same as 2016. And, they kind of held their nose and said, well, he'll shut down the border, or he'll cut taxes, or he'll lower prices. And there were a lot of people that did that. They didn't particularly like Trump, but they voted for him anyway. And so I think that the Democrats need to get out of that mode right now, where it's well, they'll vote for us because they really hate Trump. No, give them specific reasons why they should like you. And not just that you're not Trump.
The new thing that Trump has going for him is not releasing official figures, jobs numbers, keeping silent about it, and then lying about the numbers and now GDP. We've got this clip of Howard Lutnick telling us that the economy has grown 4.3%, and that means somehow, in his mind, that means that Americans are going to earn 4.3% more money.
The 4.3 GDP growth, beating it by a full point of 3.3. How does that affect our bottom line, our pocketbook issues?
So just think, the whole world out there in the third quarter, the United Kingdom grew 0.1, the European Union grew 0.4, and Japan fell 0.6%, fell 0.6%. Donald Trump's economy grew, the United States of America, the biggest economy in the world, 4.3%. What that means is that Americans overall, all of us, are going to earn 4.3% more money. We're making a raise. It's a simple way to do it. We've got more jobs, lower energy costs, and lower interest rates coming. This is the golden age coming. 4.3% this quarter means Americans on average are making more money in their pocketbooks. That makes for a great Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas. None of that is true. Should just caveat that. What do you think about this 4.3% figure, this GDP figure?
I mean,
do you think there's any truth to it, or are they just making this stuff up now?
No, I don't trust any of these numbers. I've said that when they fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, who was a nonpartisan person, after the terrible jobs report came out, and Trump said, we're going to find someone who's more qualified. What does that mean? Someone who's going to give him the numbers that he wants. We know that during the shutdown, they sent everybody home, that I read all the data, the stuff from the data experts saying that they're guesstimating a lot of this stuff. They're estimating. They don't have a lot of data from a 6-week period when they sent all these people home, which they did not need to do. They could have labeled these people essential workers, but they did not. And so we have a big hole in the data from the last quarter.
This is from the shutdown, the convenience of the
government shutdown. They sent everybody home who compiles data for 6 weeks.
Right.
And then they came back and they're behind, or they're trying to estimate certain things. And, they're like, for example, on inflation, the housing market, they had no numbers for the housing market. So they just put it in as a zero, that housing remained the same because they didn't have any data. That was our inflation for the last quarter data. I don't trust any numbers that they put out. I said that the day that they fired the Bureau of Labor Statistics person, I said, we cannot trust any more numbers from the government going forward. There are private, agencies out there that do like the jobs numbers and things like that, that you can get data from, that I think is more reliable right now, but they don't do like GDP.
Right.
So no, I don't trust this. That's number one. And then number two, if you do look at the data, where is the explosion in growth? It is, in the AI sector, in the tech sector, that is booming, and Wall Street and things like that. So those sectors of the economy are booming. It is perhaps more than any other time period, a time period when a super tiny number of people are seeing their net worth and income absolutely explode.
Yeah.
And we're not talking about the famous 1% that Bernie Sanders talks about. We're talking about like the 0.001%.
Yeah.
Are making all gobs and gobs and mountains,
including the president himself.
Including the president, and the overwhelming majority of people are doing poor. And they know it, they feel it, and nothing Howard Lutnick says on TV or Donald Trump says on TV, people just aren't believing it anymore because they know what their reality is.
I also want to mention, I think I might have said it before, but I'm very aware of the people, because of the culture, the American dream, and just the way the US is set up, something that isn't kind of replicated in Europe, is that people will quietly just use their credit cards and load up debt.
Yeah.
And so there is this kind of...
We have the highest number of credit card debt right now.
Yeah.
The highest number of people in default on car loans right now. We're going to 7 and 8 and 10-year car loans, 50-year mortgages. Yeah. That's what they were talking about. Oh, how much more money Americans spent over holidays, like 4% more this year than last year. But they got the same amount of stuff. They're just paying more for it.
Right. Well, there was that, wasn't it, like a Walmart Christmas that was used as an example, and it turned out that the number of things that were in the basket were far fewer than they were last year, and Trump used that as an example.
Yeah, I will grant them that people are spending more money. They're just not getting as much stuff for how much they're spending.
Yeah. Did you call him Nutlick? Because I think I might have called him Nutlick.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
this is now the
that's
new
name for him.
the new standard for Howard.
He's just. I wrote the other day. I'm like, if he was alive in the 19th century, he would be one of these guys like working at a carnival, like in a tent selling miracle cures. Like, but
right,
he lives in the 21st century, so he's a billionaire.
and all of these guys are Trump's friends from the golf course, right? So this is kind of how Trump instead of reading these security briefings, he just chatting to people while he's swinging his clubs.
He was the head of Cantor Fitzgerald for many years, Howard Lutnick. So that's the connection there. I mean, Trump is attracted to these super wealthy guys. And by the way, if you want to dig into how he became CEO, it's a kind of a shady story. He's got a very, very checkered background, but none of that bothers Trump.
Let's talk about the Epstein files. Donald Trump, in his Christmas message on Truth Social, kind of really got into it, and a couple of other postings as well, because obviously he's on the back foot. Trump's name is appearing more and more as these documents get released. Let's take a look at one of these postings. He wrote, "Now 1 million more pages on Epstein are found. DOJ is being forced to spend all of its time on this Democrat-inspired hoax. When do they say no more and work on election fraud, etc.? The Dems are the ones who worked with Epstein, not the Republicans. Release all of their names, embarrass them, and get back to helping our country. The radical left doesn't want people talking about Trump and Republican success. Only a long ago dead Jeffrey Epstein. Just another witch hunt." Yeah, he's worried, isn't he?
See, this is one of the things I said like a year ago about why they really, Bondi and Trump, why they really didn't want any of this stuff released, because there's so much material, there's so much stuff that there is literally no one person who knows everything that's there. There's nobody. There are thousands of people who know pieces of it, who know chunks of it, but there's no one who can sit down and say, I know everything that's out there on Epstein, right? And so what just proved that yet again was the fact that one of the links that they put out, one of the files that they put out, linked to something with over 1 million more pages of documents that no one's ever seen.
Yeah.
No one's ever looked at, other than maybe, the FBI agents 10, 15 years ago who wrote some of the reports. So that's what I'm saying. That's the danger for Trump. That's what scares the shit out of him and Bondi and all of his supporters,
right? Which
is they don't really know everything that's in there. And when people start digging in, when they get released to the public, there could be a lot of surprises, a lot of real bad surprises for them. So that's why they're so freaked out about all this stuff. That's why he's complaining about, another 1 million files have been found. But that's also why, they should have done this stuff a long time ago and put all this stuff out. It's funny for me, again, putting together that 500 to go back and read the stuff that Bondi was saying back in January, February about, she just kept promising like she had everything and was going to put it out.
It's on her desk.
Arrests were going to be coming.
Yep.
They were going to have some new indictments. And I mean, all the crap, you could just see why when July rolled around and she made the final announcement, like, that's it. We're not putting anything out and we're not arresting anybody. And MAGA went absolutely nuts. And I think a lot of Democrats maybe were a little surprised that so many Trump supporters were so furious. But it's when you go back and you read what she was telling them back in January, February, March, she made a lot of promises to them. And all she gave them was binders of bullshit.
Yeah. Trump's Merry Christmas message. I mean, just bear in mind, I'll read some of it and paraphrase, but just bear in mind that we're talking about the President of the United States, the, formerly most powerful person in the world. Not sure who holds that position right now. I think maybe Putin, thanks to Donald Trump. But his message was just nuts, literally insane. Merry Christmas to all, including the many sleazebags who loved Jeffrey Epstein, gave him bundles of money, went to his island, attended his parties, and thought he was the greatest guy on earth, only to drop him like a dog when things got too hot. Falsely claimed they had nothing to do with him, didn't know him, said he was a disgusting person, and then blamed, of course, President Donald J. Trump, who was actually the only one who did drop Epstein, and long before it became fashionable to do so. So, and then he goes on about the witch hunt.
Yeah, that's the first sentence.
Right. So this is how the President of the United States presents himself and communicates to the people of the United States and the rest of the world, whereas any kind of normal, kind of civilized president might say something kind about people and family and love and togetherness and hope. And instead he uses the word sleazebags in the first sentence. And it's just, I'm just so tired of it. I'm just tired of it. I really look forward to a time, I fear it may be kind of generational, when the next generation kind of does get a proper president, somebody who brings some kind of coherence and togetherness. And so interesting how other leaders are stepping up. Mark Carney especially, I'm kind of looking to more and more as somebody who, even though I'm not completely aligned with his politics, I certainly respect the fact that he's a person with a soul who genuinely gets it. And so a lot of our former allies in Europe are now aligning with Canada and forming their own alliances, and people are traveling to Canada instead of the United States. And now it's cheaper, apparently, for people to fly to Japan to go to Disneyland than it is to go to Disneyland in Florida. And so, there are all of these options that have become available to people and different ways of seeing the world and thinking about the world. And tourism, I mean, Vegas is screwed at the moment, has absolutely doing no business. And Vegas is often a barometer for this kind of stuff. They get a little bit of business at the weekends. Weekdays are dead, apparently. All because of one man's somehow ability to turn the world on its head.
Yeah, I think about just as a young college-age student, and getting very serious about politics and debating, and being a young conservative, and debating liberal people, and I just remember, like, we all wanted the same things. It's just that we disagreed on how to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But we all sort of had certain things that we thought were good, whether it was graduating college or, being science, good science, strong medical science, reliable advances in science and medicine. We all agreed on that. It was like, we all agreed that there should be a strong middle class, and, people should earn a living wage, all this stuff. It's just that and crime should be low. It's just that we disagreed on sort of the ways to get there,
right, or how much money should be spent.
Have good faith debates about those policies, right?
Yeah.
About how to get there. And a lot of it was based on just each person's belief in human nature, I think, more than anything else. Some are more charitable and believed in more, communal type, societal contract type things, and other people were more individualistic, survival of the fittest mentalities, like I was, and so that sort of siloed you off, but still, you all had the same goals. But it's so different now. It's like we don't have the same goals anymore. We have different ideas about the way society should be ordered and structured, and an economy, what an economy should look like.
Yes.
And you have this other weird thing about just this tiny group of people that view the economy over the next few decades as being robotic, AI controlled economies.
Mm-hmm.
And, you have 90% of people that are totally oblivious to that whole thing and can't fathom or imagine that is going to happen. And yet, the people who really run things, believe that is absolutely going to happen. And what happens to all those people who get displaced on their jobs? So there's big things, on the horizon, but we fight because of Donald Trump. We're fighting about all these dumb culture war, stupid issues that he finds to divide us when we really should all be looking for the same thing. And part of it is holiday messages. And it's not just this one. I mean, you can go to my social media account and type in Christmas or Easter in the search
He's been
bar.
consistent with his hatred.
Every holiday he does this.
Yeah.
Veterans Day, Memorial Day, Easter, Christmas, you name it.
MLK
Halloween.
Day, yeah.
He does the same thing. It's never anything appropriate.
Also, this desire to compartmentalize people into groups and to think that all Democrats are like this and all black people are like this and all Asian people are like this. And I don't know about your family, but my family is so kind of multi-racial, multi-ethnic, multinational. It's straight, it's gay, it's black, it's white. That is the reality of modern families. And so Trump does not, there is nothing in Trump's rhetoric that reflects modern America. And so really what he's talking about, this desire to go back to the Gilded Age and where, white men control all the land and women don't get to vote and should be home making food and babies and things. I mean, it is so different to where the US and the rest of the world is now. And so that's my greatest concern.
Well, that's why they're so strong against immigration, you know, and they want to deport everybody.
Yeah.
Because they want to, they don't want to deport white people.
And there's even talk, of now, I heard J.D. Vance saying he did an interview. I wrote a piece on Substack about this, but he did an interview with a British magazine that hasn't really got any coverage that I can see, where he's saying, should European allies, they didn't actually say allies, the Europeans, should they have nuclear weapons if they don't subscribe to our view of the world, the far-right nationalist view where white people are the dominant force? And so he's looking at now cherry-picking European countries, which are NATO members, and saying that really the US needs to disarm these countries.
Because the thought process is that they're being taken over by a Muslim minority who's going to outbreed them. All the whole theory. Take over those governments that have nuclear weapons. So essentially, the country will be, what they say is like, Europe will be conquered in a way, that the Muslims tried to conquer Europe for many centuries and were unable to do it. And this is how they figured out how to do it.
Yeah. Because what he's alluding to is the US going to war with Europe, effectively. That's where this ends.
Yeah, economic war and military, definitely. That's why I continue to say, like, Europe must rearm and stop acting like this is 1960.
Right. That is being led by...
They actually need to act like it's 1930 again.
Yeah. But that's why Canada is stepping up in a leadership position and really forming these new alliances. And it's very interesting how the power of the US, the way I say, is the US the superpower anymore? These new Trump class destroyers that he's talking about building, they will never happen. This is all, it's all just bluster. The US military doesn't have a need for these types of...
Those will never happen.
These types of ships.
Right.
Again, it's all just Trump's ego and desire to present this kind of mighty front, but in reality, that's not how the world works anymore. Okay, let's try and finish on a slightly more positive note, if there is, or if there is
something
one.
Positive.
Well, I wanted to talk about the Trump Kennedy Center because, of course, this is...
Yeah, you're really trying to cheer me up with that
I just thought, why not? It's entertainment. I have to tell you something, though. I've always been a fan of Michael Crawford, the British actor who portrayed the Phantom of the Opera the first time, and very famous in England for a whole bunch of shows, and he was in Hello, Dolly in the movie and everything. But to see him on the stage with Donald Trump accepting a Kennedy Center honor and saying, "Oh, I'm not political," I found completely offensive. And I went to see that guy in Barnum. I've chased him all around the world. I think he's one of the most talented entertainers to come out of the UK. But I have lost all respect for him since he was so blind. Now, whether he's a conservative or not, I don't know. All I know is that his tone deafness surrounding what has gone on at the Kennedy Center because of Donald Trump's intervention is really a kind of lesson to all of us, that no matter who you are, you really need to stand up for what is right in society and not fall to fascism. And him accepting that award, to me, is symbolistic of that. Richard Grinnell, who's kind of running the show, posted, "The artists who are now cancelling shows were booked by the previous far-left leadership. Their actions prove that the previous team was more concerned about booking far-left political activists rather than artists willing to perform for everyone, regardless of their political beliefs. Boycotting the arts to show you support the arts is a form of derangement syndrome. The arts are for everyone and the left is mad about it." I mean, that doesn't make any sense for a start. We should just remind people that many of the artists booked for this year and next year have cancelled their performances because of Trump's desecration of this monument to the Kennedy family. Where do you stand on this, Ron?
So again, reviewing this year, as I just did to put together my list, there was a lot of Kennedy Center evolution and Rick Grinnell stuff. Let me just say this: Grinnell was the only openly gay member of the first Trump administration.
Mm-hmm.
So now he's got Bessent there, so he's not the only one. But when he spent a lot of time at Mar-a-Lago and with Trump, and he lives in California, so I don't think he really wanted to do that, but he kind of felt like he had to, because he really wanted to be Secretary of State. And what he did is he even put almost $1 million in Melania's pocket, where he hosted these two Log Cabin Republican, which is the gay Republican group, two events where Melania was the keynote speaker, and she was paid, I think, $500,000 for each appearance to go in and give a 10-minute speech.
I remember.
So what Grinnell was doing was just paying Melania to get to, Don, because he really wanted to be Secretary of State. That's what he wanted. And he didn't get anything he wanted. He didn't even get something lower down the food chain. NSA, something like that, CIA. He was hoping for one of those jobs, expected one of those jobs. And what did he get? He got put in charge of the Kennedy Center. Why? Well, because it's arts. So just like Trump always makes a black guy the housing and urban development director,
you make a gay man the
you
arts.
put the gay guy. Who do I get for the arts center? The gay guy. Even though he has no connection with the arts whatsoever, Trump just assumes he's gay, he must know art, right? So Grinnell is the most obnoxious asshole like in the whole administration. Like, I can't stand the guy. Like, literally his only friend is Kash Patel. I don't know anybody else that even likes him, including the people in Trump's orbit. So they put him in the Kennedy Center, and like from minute one, he'd just been alienating. By the way, they canceled a lot of gay shows that were scheduled to perform because they weren't considered, with no explanation. They just called him and said there was like a pride thing, and they said, "You're canceled." Like, didn't tell him why. So a lot of people protested against that. Trump fires the entire board. A lot of performers then, like Hamilton, canceled because of that, and a lot of others. So you had all these people that were canceling, and then Trump announces he's going to do the annual dinner. He's going to MC it. More people cancel. And then the final coup de grace was, he put his name on the building, and made it the Trump Kennedy Center. And that was it. That was a final straw.
Right.
It was just this mass exodus. So now, literally, of the remaining performers that were scheduled to perform, only one is left. They have one performance scheduled for 2026. That's it, out of a full book. So I don't know what they're going to do. But by the way, also a lot of the big money donors have pulled out. Yes. Now he's brought more in, these companies that want something from the government. So, he's bringing in money, but a lot of these people are just contributing money, not because they're supporters of the arts, but because they're trying to get a pardon or whatever.
Right.
So anyway,
the theater
bottom
will probably
line is
go
this is
dark.
a total disaster. This whole thing.
There is an interesting kind of correlation between Republicans and that kind of conservative mindset and this kind of maybe I've got it the wrong way around, but it's like Republicans don't do art. They don't do theater.
No.
They don't really, they're not really motivated or driven by the arts or inspired by the arts in the same way that Democrats are. Now, this is a sweeping generalization.
They like movies like The Godfather.
Right, but this, the kind of the liberal mindset, you know, and we could spend a whole hour kind of getting into the weeds of that conversation. Sure. But it is interesting that when I watched
AC/DC and The Godfather,
right, and I watched Donald Trump.
The arts. That's right. The arts.
And Sylvester Stallone, don't forget, and his brother Frank. You know, those two, and unfortunately Michael Crawford as well.
Kid
but
Rock and
the was it Gloria Gaynor was up there as well. But the lineup is just so utterly depressing. And Trump, when he was kind of announcing everybody and giving them their medals, he was describing them like, you know, they were the greatest thing. And I don't know, I just felt really sad because the arts is important and it is for everybody. And that's why Grinnell's message kind of didn't make sense, because it's Trump's intervention that is the reason why these artists are stepping aside. It's nothing to do with the audiences. You know, they'll perform for anybody. But what they won't do is support the illegal desecration of a monument, because it makes them... I mean, you could argue that they're kind of party to a crime. It's a crime scene, currently. I don't know. I just feel very sad.
I can't imagine anyone who would go to a show there or perform there right now.
Yeah.
After all that's happened this year,
right.
I can't imagine it. So they're going to get MAGA performers, which there aren't any. You know,
Lee Greenwood, I'm sure, will have a sellout 52-week show.
Stand up.
Yeah,
you know, they're going to bring back Chachi from Happy Days.
Happy Days.
What's his name? Scott Baio.
Yeah.
Kirk Cameron's going to read his children's books.
Right.
That's pretty much it. Ted Nugent.
Yeah.
You know,
Dean Cain will do his Superman routine.
Well, he's works for ICE now.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
When he's not rehabbing an injury from training.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't have many performers.
It's such a shame because, you know, I watch those old Kennedy Center Honors videos on YouTube. The Carole King one I'm a big fan of. It's most beautiful. There's one,
my all-time favorites.
Right. There's one with Aretha Franklin where she's wearing her big kind of mink coat and she throws it off halfway through the song, gets up from the piano. I mean, like you get goosebumps. These moments are just so beautiful of real art, true talent, and all of that is now confined to history. Instead, we have Frank Stallone singing a Sinatra song.
You're going to get patriotic art. What you're going to get.
What a shame. Okay, one final thing, and that is that, you know, Trump's pardons of these criminals. I want to know from you whether this is having any effect on Republican voters and Trump supporters when they see the likes of these fraudsters. This is the this couple who have been pardoned after convicted of 12 counts of bank fraud and tax evasion. They don't have to pay back their $17 million in restitution. They don't have to serve their 12-year sentence. And you know, these characters, it's time and time again. I mean, it started with him pardoning and commuting the sentences of the January 6th rioters and insurrectionists, and now it's becoming he's doing drug dealers and traffickers and all these people. At what point do Trump supporters go, but they're all criminals and he's pardoning convicted criminals who in many cases have pleaded guilty? At what point do people go, Trump's aligned with the wrong people in history?
Because you make a good point, because it's the nature of the people that he's pardoning. So you have to realize that the vast majority of MAGA supporters are working class, blue collar, white, rural. That's like the vast majority of the MAGA base, right?
Yeah.
They're not wealthy. So, you know, you watch these people that Trump are pardoning and they're all billionaires or very wealthy people, politicians, famous people, celebrities. Trump doesn't pardon anyone who's not rich. None of his pardons, except for the January 6ers. They're the only ones. But every single other pardon Trump has given has been a wealthy, politically connected Republican who defrauded people out of, in some cases, over $1 billion, but tens of thousands of victims. And when Trump is issuing these pardons, not only are they walking out of prison, some of these people, or their charges are getting dropped right before trial, but they also don't have to pay back all the victims. The thousands of people that they stole money from or they embezzled money from, like Steve Bannon did, they don't have to pay it back. And in a lot of these cases, like the people that you just showed, they owed $17 million. That's ordered by a judge, that as soon as they get out of prison, they have to start paying this money back. Well, now they don't. All these people get up, all because so it is a good question. I mean, I don't ever hear MAGA supporters talk about the pardons at all. I think it's just a subject where it's something that they want to avoid. It's sort of like Democrats right now avoiding the latest fraud news out of Minnesota. It's like, you just sort of like, enough. Like, I don't want to hear about it anymore. And I think that's where they're at with the pardons, because they can't defend them. They won't defend them because there's nothing that they can say good about them. The only thing that I want to know is this: Ed Martin is the one that runs all the pardons. He runs the pardon shop. He is the one that everybody goes to. And there's this whole industry that has grown up in the last year of these tiny handful of lawyers in DC who are now pardon lobbyists. And all they do is like wine and dine and sweet talk Ed Martin. And Ed Martin's the gatekeeper for all this, who's literally one of the worst people, most disgusting people. He was nominated originally for DC U.S. attorney, couldn't get any Republican senators to vote for him. He's that bad. And so Trump moved him over to the pardon office. So now now all these people they all just lobby Ed Martin. And then Ed Martin brings his list to Trump and Trump pardons them. The question is, what are they paying? You know, we know that they're paying the lobbyists millions of dollars. The going rate now is like $500,000 for the minor offense, lower offenses, as much as $1 million per pardon. Now that's what's just being paid to the lobby person. The question is, where is that money going, or is there any other? Some of these people are attending Trump fundraisers. Some of them are making big donations to the ballroom, you know, but some of them are buying Trump crypto. But we aren't going to fully know. I think this is one thing where when Democrats do take the House, they can start an investigation of Ed Martin and the pardon office. Yeah. Because I want to know, he's benefiting somehow because he's not a super rich guy. I want to know how he's benefiting from this because he's getting something.
There's been a few exposés in the last few days. The Guardian did a story on, cash for pardons. ProPublica did one too. I mean, again, this is the type of story that would bring down a president, bring down a government in any civilized functioning democracy. America is not that anymore. The corruption is very much that is the nucleus of this executive branch. And so this again would be something that the Democrats should be using right now to sell their offering. They should say, we recognize that people are paying big bucks for pardons, and we're going to expose that and look into that.
Really, the only media outlets that make a big deal out of the pardons on a regular basis is New York Times. Because there's one reporter who pretty much writes only about pardons every day, and I read him every day. And me, I mean, I put the stuff on social media, all of his pardons, all of it, including the one that you just put up on the screen, which I put out today. So I cover every single one of his pardons, but the vast majority of mainstream media, they'll write a little blurb about it, but they won't push it up on their, it gets no run or traction. It doesn't get on TV.
Or recognize the consequences, because, remember these
victims, interviewing the victims.
Yes.
No, there's largely, and Democrats don't talk about this at all. They might talk about one here or there, but mostly no.
And there are often crimes that Trump is pardoning that bear a resemblance to crimes that he has been accused of previously, like with Tish James, for example. And
or he's
so
accusing others of.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay, listen, we have to finish, but we should probably wish everybody a very happy new year, because, you know, it's testing times, and, you know, I recognize that people are feeling a lot of anxiety, and you know, that there is a heaviness upon our hearts because of the way the US is kind of falling to this fascist movement, and we feel it, and we see it, and we see you, and we recognize that, you know, fortunately we have this community and these opportunities to meet and chat, and so let's continue the crusade in the new year. Ron, very happy new year to you and to your family, and thanks for everything this last 12 months.
Yep. Happy New Year to you and to your family as well, and everyone out there who, I know this isn't the most pleasant stuff to talk about. It's a little bit like going to the dentist, you know, but we got to do it. We got to stay vigilant and stay informed. And 2026 is going to be a wild year.
For sure. All right.
Buckle up.
Buckle up. Happy New Year. Bye for now.